another major trial that we've been covering here on Court TV is the one involving Ghislaine Maxwell. Day 2 now of her high-profile trial. According to prosecutors, Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein were, quote, partners in crime in the sexual abuse of teenage girls from 1994 to 2004. Assistant U.S. Attorney Lara Pomerantz described Maxwell as central to Epstein's sex abuse scheme. Today, the state's first witness, Lawrence Paul Visosky Jr., a longtime pilot for Epstein, testified that Maxwell was Epstein's number 2. And prosecutors used his testimony to show jurors photographs of Epstein's home, his property. The first accuser in Maxwell's trial also took the stand. This accuser, identified as Jane, said she was recruited for sex by Maxwell and Epstein at age 14. Maxwell's lawyers argue she was being made a scapegoat, though, for the now deceased Epstein. The defense attorney, Bob Sternum, said, the 4 women who will likely testify Maxwell recruited them to be sexually abused are suffering from quarter-century-old memories, and said that the women, quote, have shaken the money tree and millions of dollars have fallen their way. So, Matthew, this case has a lot of details to sift through as well. So far, a lot of focus on Epstein. Do you think that's a mistake, though, on the part of the prosecutors to focus on him and not her?
Well, making it, Epstein, a lot of people feel, a certain way about Epstein and all the images and all the evidence showing all this, extensive relationship. It's easy almost to kind of impute guilt on Maxwell just by imputing guilt on Epstein. Is it a mistake? No, I don't think so. I think they know exactly what they're doing. They're utilizing Epstein as a way of making Maxwell, the seminal defendant now, look bad. But the defense is raising a very good argument. I think that this might be, what we've reaped from not being able to have a conviction on Epstein himself. So this is like the next best thing.
Yeah, so obviously the prosecution is arguing that Maxwell groomed these accusers that, really kind of pretended to be their friend and earned their trust and, would take them to the movies and so forth, only to then turn around and abuse that trust for the purposes of sex abuse. It's really a complex argument to lay out, is it not?
It is, but you know what? It's so believable just from the way that you could, show how she is affectionate in images, and maybe how well liked she is, and almost kind of show how she maybe would utilize that to manipulate these younger, more likely to be influenced individuals.
Yeah. So, the defense has kind of, they use some pretty strong language about shaking the money tree. They're saying that these accusers have financially gained from these accusations. Does that work to kind of undermine the credibility of these accusers, or does it boomerang and look like the defense is really being insensitive to women who may have been abused?
No, there's no way that you could defend this without almost kind of appearing as insensitive to these victims. I think that attorneys are careful to say these individuals maybe are not abused, but also I think financially, they have all the benefit. And that's something that this jury should know about. Look at what they stand to gain from feeding you information that maybe the prosecution wants you to hear. So, I think that that's a very smart thing to do. And as a defense attorney, it's what I would have done. Yeah,
it's interesting, though, because I recall that during the R. Kelly trial, we heard kind of some similar arguments from Kelly's defense that, his accusers were benefiting not only financially, but kind of by achieving some sort of fame and so forth. Clearly, it boomeranged, and he was convicted, right? But I want to ask you also about the timing of when these alleged crimes happened, because the first instance, some 27 years ago, back in 1994. So is there concern about memories fading?
Absolutely. Memory. And not only that, there's going to be a memory expert, I believe, in this case, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the things about memory is that when you tell a story over and over and over again, the story changes. We know this. So that's going to be a big issue here. But do I ultimately think that they may be able to get something to stick? Yeah, I think that they're going to be able to get some conviction on her. despite any memory issues that this jury is going to have to sweep through.
Yeah, and you know, you sound confident there will be, you know, they're going to catch her on something. How much does the Me Too movement, the post Me Too movement landscape play into that?
You know, a big factor. I think that as a whole, as a unit, America has had a smaller appetite for that than ever before, and that's a movement that's, you know, moved well for itself. And you know, the timing is quite, you know, contemporaneous almost in nature. And one big thing to remember is that a lot of people feel like these victims did not receive compensation, at least in the way that they should have. Yet Epstein was mega rich and has done a lot to be able to conceal that money. And so, you know, the money tree, the timeline, all of that, it really comes into play all in one, including the Me Too movement right in this case. And this jury is going to have to deal with all that, ancillary side talk as well as actual evidence being presented to them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matthew Barhoma, for your insight and analysis.